Hello and welcome. This is Dawn and I'm back with another video for Pink Fresh. So today I'm going to be using some of the new product from the Pure Joy release, specifically the Breezy Blossoms collection. I fell in love with this as soon as I saw it, and we're going to create a trio of cards that are all similar but different. Now, like I mentioned, I'm going to be using the Breezy Blossoms collection. So there is a red rubber background stamp here, a die. There's a press plate that can be used for letterpress or foiling. I absolutely love this. And then there's also a stencil, a layering stencil, so that you can color in these images easily if you want. And I'll be using all but the stamp set today. So starting with the press plate, we're going to use this to do our hot foiling, and I'm going to pair this with a high shine gold foil. Now I like to tape my plates in place. Even if I'm just doing a background, I just like the security of knowing that my foil is not going to shift or my plate's not going to shift. So I've got 110-pound Nina white cardstock here, and I'm going to cut off a length of this foil that's large enough to cover the entire plate. Then I'm going to create my sandwich by laying my foil shiny side up, so pretty side faces the plate. And then I'm just going to flip my plate back in place. So because I created like a hinge with the washi tape, I can just flip my die right back over, and then I'm going to tape it again at the bottom, again, just to hold everything in place. I'll trim off the excess. And then once my platform is ready, the little green light will come on, and then I'll put my sandwich of paper and plates there on my glimmer machine. You'll go plate down, add my shim and my spacer pad, and then I'll press my timer. Once the timer is done, it will stop blinking and it will be solid, and it's time to run it through our platinum here. So I'm going to disengage this from the machine. I'm going to bring it over to my platinum 6, and then I'm just going to roll that through, just like if you were die cutting. Except for here, we're just using that glimmer machine base and sending that through. Now what is going to happen is the heat and the pressure, so the heat from the glimmer machine and then the pressure from our die cutting machine is going to transfer that foil beautifully. It is absolutely stunning. Foiling is something that I like to do a lot of when I have the machine out and it's heated up. And when I do, every time I use it, I remember how much I absolutely love it. Like, look at this, absolutely gorgeous. And these LetterPress plates are fantastic for doing hot foiling because they have so much detail, and those super fine lines really catch the light and make it almost sparkle. It's absolutely stunning. So while I had the hot foil machine out, I went ahead and did a second one, and now it's time to add our color using our stencils. So the Breezy Blossoms stencil has 6 layers, and I always like to put my paper and stencil down on some sort of grip mat. This is the Altenew, the Altenew grip mat. And I will have everything linked in the description box below. So if you're looking for any of the supplies that are featured in today's video, make sure you check there. All right, so I will line up the first stencil. And again, I like how some sort of grip mat, using a grip mat lets the stencil stick to the outer edges, and then it won't shift and move on me. All right, I'm pulled out my blender brushes here and a myriad of Pink Fresh inks. Now I have bought a whole lot of the 4-pack cubes, and I absolutely love these. It's a great value, and I like that all of the colors are in the same color family, but they are different values. So you've got your lightest to your darkest in 4 steps. So I've grabbed the Berrylicious, and I'm going to apply this quite lightly. Now the reason I went with one of the darker ones is because I can apply this very light-handed to get a very light value of this color, or I can go really heavy and get a deep saturated value of this color. But I can also stretch this by using the same color for multiple layers in this stencil. So for the very first layer, I'm going to go very light. I'm going to concentrate my color in the center of the flower and then just kind of let it fade out along the edges there, almost to white. Just a very, very light reddish there. Now I'm going to speed this up because I am a very meticulous blender, you guys. I know stencils are supposed to be there to help us save time. I can color faster than I can ink blend because I still try to add in all of that depth and dimension. So I take my time, I check where I'm at, and then I will build up color if necessary. So yeah, I still I'm still quite slow, even with a stencil. So to save you guys the torture, I have sped this up quite a bit. So you can see I've got a very soft transition from the deeper color in the center of the flowers to a lighter color. I've laid down that second stencil there, and again, I'm coming right back over that with Berrylicious. This time I'm going a bit heavier. And again, always I can check by lifting the corner, see how dark I am. If I need to go darker, I add more. Now for the third layer, this has the centers of those flowers we just colored, and then it has the other flowers and then these little buds. So for the very centers of these flowers, I'm using Espresso. That's a nice deep brown. I'm just putting that right in the center, building that color up until I'm happy with it. And then I've laid that stencil back down because I realized that I needed to color the rest of the flowers. So for that, I've used Clementine. Used the exact same process that I used for the other flower. The fifth stencil, I put those centers in with another layer of Clementine. And now we're putting down the fifth stencil here, and this we are using a little bit of spruce tips. And again, this is a pretty deep color, but I'm applying it very lightly because this is the first layer of these leaves, and I'm going to have a detail layer that I can add some darker accents. I like to vary my amount of pressure on this layer. Always with leaves, I'll put some light and some heavier just so that there's variation and it's not flat color. Now, if you are one who loves flat, solid, saturated color, then you can absolutely do that. I just like to still get some variation in my color, so I like to control the application here. So now I'm going to add in my final layer, and for that I'm using Storm. So I'm going to use a blue to put in my detail layers over top of that spruce tips. And it's going to give me, it's going to blend in some places, and then it's going to be the true Storm in other places. And I just think that this adds a lot. It's absolutely beautiful. So our ink blending is done for that panel. You'll notice that for the flowers on this one, I used warm colors, and for the leaves, I went with cooler colors. So this was on purpose, because remember, I foiled 2 of these. So for the other one, I did my flowers in cool colors, and then I did my leaves in warm greens. So this is just going to create a nice contrast of warm and cools. So there, I've got all my pieces die cut. I used the coordinating die for that, and it's time to work on our backgrounds for our cards. And for that, I'm using the stippled plaid press plate here, and this time we are going to be doing some letterpress. So I've got my LetterPress system out, and I'm going to lay my plate down. The markings there are marked out for an A2 size, so I can lay my plate down there. It fits perfectly. The magnetic chase there is going to hold it in place. And then I'm going to tape a piece of cardstock here using that A2 guide on my platen into place with a little bit of washi tape. Now I am just using 110-pound Neenah cardstock here. I'm not necessarily using this for the letterpress quality. I want to use it more like a stamp, and when I use thinner cardstock, I'm able to just transfer ink to the paper without really worrying about making an impression. Now, if you wanted the impression and the ink, then you'd be better to use the letterpress paper or a cotton panel. That's going to give you the best letterpress results. But here, like I said, I'm just going to use it more like a stamp. So I just want to transfer that ink and that pattern to the paper. So for this first one, I'm using Storm, and you can see I've got some ink there on the base of the plate, and I was worried that it might transfer. But again, because I'm using a thinner cardstock here, it's only 110 pound, and I was surprised. It worked just fine. Okay, so I sent that through my die cut machine, and here you can see. Now I do have some uneven inking. I was kind of worried. Like I said, when I saw it getting onto the background, I was kind of being a little bit more ginger with my ink application. But on my second one and my third one, I just threw caution to the wind and inked that plate up really well, and they turned out much better. But we're still going to use this. All right, so I've put down a new sheet of paper, and I'm inking up the plate again with Coral Bliss. And you can see here, I am really inking up this plate. I'm not smushing the ink pad. I am firmly tapping it. Quick, firm taps, but I am making sure to cover the entire plate. And you can see here, this one came out really, really well. So I ended up doing 3 of these backgrounds. So you can see here, we've got the Storm, the Coral Reef, and Peach Fuzz. Now, before we get to arranging our florals here, I've got one more step I need to do for our friend card. I'm going to take the Julietta Alpha, and this is from Pink Fresh Studios' last release, and I absolutely love this alphabet. I used it last time, but I held off showing that video because it was sold out by the time I got the video edited. But I checked, it is back in stock, so we can go ahead and use it for today's cards. I'm going to die cut friend. Now, instead of just laying my letters out and cutting them out haphazardly, I want to use the negative. So what's left over after I die cut the letters out, I'm going to use that this time. So I'm grabbing the letters that I need, and then I'm going to arrange them in the center of my cardstock in a pleasing arrangement. And this is going to give me a twofer. I can use the resulting letters that I die cut out, and I can use this negative, the leftover pieces from which I die cut. So you could see here, if I had these cut out as letters, I could then arrange my florals around this word and kind of fill in the little gaps. Or I can use it with the negative, which is what I'm going to do today. So I need to make sure that these don't shift or move. So once I've got them where I want them, I'm going to use a little bit of washi tape to tape them into place. And again, this will just ensure that they don't shift or move. Make sure that you are using some washi tape you've used a couple times before, or that you've taken the stick off by sticking it on your pants and pulling it off, sticking it on your shirt and pulling off, whatever. Just something to take away some of that tack so that when it goes through the die cut machine, that extra pressure doesn't cause the washi tape to rip your paper when you go to remove the dies. And even then, take your time removing the washi tape and do it slowly so you don't rip your paper. All right, so now we have the word friend that we can use on a project, and then we have the negative here that we can use on a project. All right, so I went ahead and arranged all of my florals for each of my cards. So this is the basis of each of my cards. These are the things we've created so far, with the exception of that one label using the folk edge rectangles, and we'll end up using that die on each card here today. Now, I've done all of my arranging, and I want to keep these arrangements together while I construct the rest of the card. So I'm going to grab my press and seal. If you've been here a minute, if you've seen a lot of my videos, you know me and press and seal, we are besties. You're going to have to fight me for the press and seal. I use it a lot. So I just pull off a piece. I'm going to cut this one in half, and then I'm going to lay it over top of my arrangement. Now, rather than laying it vertical, I'm going to lay it horizontal off to one edge, and that's because I use the hinge method to adhere this to my project eventually. So I like to have that little extra bit off to the left that I can press to the table. And you'll see a little bit of that when we get to the card construction. But this way I can just pick up the whole arrangement and it stays all together. Now you want to kind of rub your finger over each of the pieces to make sure that the press and seal is adhered to each die cut. And I would not leave this on for days. You can leave this on for a day, a couple hours, but if you leave it on for several days, you will have sticky residue left on top of your die cuts. So I usually do this when I am ready to adhere. All right, so I'm just going to pick up the rest of my arrangements for the cards here, and we'll put these over to the side, like I said, while we build the rest of the cards. Super easy and a lifesaver if you like to make multiple cards. Okay, so like I said earlier, all of our cards are going to feature the folk edge rectangles here, and I'm going to use the straight edge on this panel. But here's the thing, with these square and rectangle, especially rectangle dies, these thin border dies, if you put these through your die cut machine with just a little bit of tape on the corners, the pressure of the machine can cause the edges of these to bow. Right? So they won't stay completely straight. They are steel and they are thin. So you'll end up, you can see here, there's a little give. So you'll end up with like a wonky rectangle. It won't be a perfect rectangle. So what I like to do is take washi tape and put a long section of it on all four sides. This helps to keep my rectangle as a true rectangle, and it keeps those sides, any of the sides, from bowing or shifting when it goes through the die cut machine. So that's just my little tip. When you're using these thinner dies, like I said, the rectangles are notorious for it. When they have a little bit more heft to them, like the border on these folk edge rectangles, the one that has the decorative edge, the steel is wider. so it's not as prone to getting a little misshapen when it goes through the die cut machine. But these little guys right here, almost every single time I will go to adhere it and I'm like, why are you not straight? I'm like, I know it's straight over here, but why does it crooked over there? And I'll check it on my mat, and it's because it cut out a wonky rectangle. So taping it on all four sides really helps to lessen the chances of that. All right, so we are going to adhere these two panels together eventually, but now it's time to adhere our florals. So I start by taping my panel into place. This will keep it from shifting underneath. Then I'm going to take my arrangement and lay it over top wherever I want it. I can make any minor adjustments here because the whole bouquet is held together by that press and seal. So once I've got it in place, I'm going to press one side of the press and seal to the mat. This is going to create that hinge, and then I can just flip the whole piece back and start applying my adhesives. So I like to use a mix of glue, liquid adhesive, and foam tape. So you guys have seen me do this a million times. So I like to start from the bottom and build my way up to the top. So once I flip that press and seal over, anything that's sitting on top will get adhered first. I add my adhesive and give it a minute to take hold, and then I pull back the entire sheet, and everything that's adhered will stay in place, and everything that is not adhered will come back up with the press and seal. So here you can see I'll just fold this back, and all of my pieces that I adhered are staying on my project. Now I can kind of take a look and decide what I want to pop up and what I want to adhere flat. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the next layer flat. And now I can start using my foam adhesives. And I like to use a mix of different heights of foam adhesive. So usually towards the bottom, I like to use a thinner profile adhesive. And then as I get closer to the top of the bouquet, I increase the thickness of my foam adhesive. Now this can be a little bit tedious. You're going to cut pieces and apply them, and you're adhering everything in layers. If you prefer, you can just adhere everything flat. You can adhere things on the fly and kind of build as you go. For me, this is what works the best, and I know that my bouquets are going to end up exactly where I wanted them, and I'm going to have just a nice mix of dimension and heights. And again, I have total control. I like to have a little bit of control. All right, so when I get to the final pieces, sometimes I'll continue to use the hinge method here, but other times I'll just pick them off of the press and seal and add them in. It's really easy now that we're down to like the last two pieces. All right, so after this, we can just start assembling our card. All right, so I've got all the pieces here. I've added a little bit of twine to the bottom of my panel here, and we need to pop it up on our other panel because that twine is going to create a little bit of bulk. So I've got a thin, low profile foam tape here, and I'm just going to add this to the back, and I'm going to skip the area where the twine is. Remove the release paper, and then I'm just going to center this on our panel here, and then I can add my sentiment. Now, I was originally going to do this in the espresso, but I actually really liked it with colored sentiment better. I don't really do colored sentiments too often, but I've been trying to do it more lately because I do admire it in other cards. So I've tried to work it into some of my cards. I still think I prefer a nice neutral sentiment, but every now and then that extra little pop of color is really nice. So I have stamped and die cut the Happy Vibes stamp set along with the coordinating dies. And I used, I believe I used Clementine for this. No, I'm lying. I used the Peach Fuzz. So I used the same ink that I used in the background, except for I stamped it twice. So that's going to give it a nice deep color. The more you stamp a color, the more saturated or darker it will get. So here I'm trying to make sure that my sentiment is level, so I'm being very strategic about where I put my foam tape. Remember, I have a lot of dimension built up in that bouquet that we adhered, so I put some foam tape down, then I check it to make sure that it's going to be flush, so it's raised in the areas where it's going to go over the bouquet, and then I add the foam tape in the areas where it's going to adhere flat to the panel. So this is, again, just going to make sure that my sentiment is level and flush with the card design. Now all we have to do is adhere this to a standard A2 card base. I used the exact same process for the remaining 2 cards, so let's go ahead and review those now. So here's the card that we just finished. All 3 of the cards featured that press plate, hot foiled in that high shine gold, and I just love the elegance that that adds. We also used a press plate as more like a stamp for the background. And then over here, we've got just a little bit of detail with that folk edge rectangles, a little bit of twine, and then our colored sentiment finishes it off. Now for the second card, I put together a central bouquet. So this is what I like to call my front and center design. So it's one of my go-tos anytime I don't quite know what to do. I just create a central focal point and group everything right there in the center. Again, that folk edge rectangle really sets it off, and this time we pushed that press plate to the background and added our color there. Love this one as well. Now here's the one that we did with our negative alphabet die cuts. This one, I think this one's my favorite. I backed it with a little bit of a very, very light green cardstock, added a little bit of foam tape to give it a natural shadow, and then created some clusters of flowers there in the corners. This one, yeah, this one's definitely my favorite. I love how this one turned out. Again, we finished it off with that same Good Vibes stamp set. So, so good. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's cards. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. You'll be able to find all of the featured products linked in the description box below. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.